Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
And I would like to welcome everyone. My name is Marcio Katz. I'm the Chief Operation Officer for Get Global International. And this is our Get Privacy podcast. And today we are more than excited for two different reasons. The first one is because Jennifer McIntosh is going to be my co host from now on. So thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me. Yes, that's
Oh,
always fun. Always fun.
yeah. And the second reason it's because our guest is Andrew Bjerken.
Yes.
Yes, he's the head of global privacy for Marriott Vacations Worldwide. So thank you so much, Andrew, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, perfect. And here goes my first question. Andrew, how did you get involved with data privacy? Can you tell us a little bit about your career?
Yep, absolutely. I can certainly tell you I wasn't high school. Drew was not sitting back thinking about becoming a privacy practitioner. That certainly
None of
wasn't.
us, probably.
Yeah, no. Nope.
So, but actually a very somewhat unique way of getting into privacy. I actually finished up my master's degree in forensic science. Thought I was going to go and work for the FBI doing computer forensics. Ended up joining the military and flying for the Air Force for 7, almost 8 years. My specialty was electronic warfare.
Oh,
So
wow.
think about radars, those kind of things. If it beeps and squeaks, right, we would jam it or do something to it in the electromagnetic field. Well,
Interesting.
as the field started to advance, it became information warfare. I ended up commanding the Air Force Red Team missions. So think about the movie Mission Impossible, breaking into government facilities, hacking and cracking computers, which led me into information security. So after about 13 years in the military, transitioned out, and my first job was in the information security field. I was now a defender, so I ran incident response for ADP, the payroll company.
Oh, wow.
I'd spent a lot of years, right, hacking and cracking and going into government systems and teaching the defenders on the blue side, how do you not find the needle in the haystack? Well, there's a lot of hay out there when you're on the other side. You start to realize for it, moved up the security space. And then I became a chief information security officer and chief privacy officer at a university, so Northern Illinois University, which is really, while I had dipped my toe into privacy, I remember going to RSA conference probably back in 2013. I took in a couple of the events for privacy, and I remember sitting there thinking to myself, and I say this with nothing but love for privacy in my heart. I'm like, man, these people are getting excited about a new regulation coming down. I thought security, we were a little bit, quirky, but holy buckets. And now here we are 10 years later. I'm like, oh my God, have you guys heard that there's a new privacy regulation coming down? And I'm all jazzed about it. So I have them officially, swapped over, but I was
Welcome
there
to
at
the
the
dark
university
side.
for about 3 years, and then went over to a marketing company, a global marketing company, where I was their CISO and chief privacy officer. And then Marriott usually we were in about doing just privacy. I was like, ooh, I hadn't, but it sounds interesting. And, we're spanning 90 plus countries. So, it's a pretty big swath and a lot of privacy regulations that we have to deal with. So now I'm leading the global team here.
Okay. Data privacy nowadays is global, right?
Yep.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Wow. That's that you're kind of that's the security background, data security background for me is so key to being a good privacy, understanding privacy and how those two interrelate and where one can complement the other. So, and where you can kill two birds with one stone with the same type of implementation or similar implementation and work by different teams. You're accomplishing the goals faster. As far as I mean, the hotel industry is certainly one of the most, I guess, impacted and from a hacker standpoint, sought after industries and verticals. How, with regard to your work now, how do you see privacy as a strategic matter for the business, for Marriott in particular, going forward?
Yeah, you know, and I've been fortunate, right? I've been in finance, I've been in education. I had some time actually, consumer products, good space, and obviously the military. Hospitality is no different than any other space.
Yeah.
You know, when we start looking at the importance of data privacy, right? We're closely tied to our guests. And when it comes to guests, I always tell folks, trust and transparency will build loyalty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who's heard me talk at my company, that they know that that's my mantra, you know, for it. So I think we need to demonstrate a strong commitment to protecting our owners and guests. And for us, you'll find that in VW, we are a little different, right, in the hospitality space because we have vacation ownership. So we don't have just guests. We
Yeah.
have folks that really become part of our family because they come back to the same resort year after year after year. We're also in that gray space because whether people know it or not, we give out about $1 billion worth of mortgage loans every year. So we also have a financial arm as well in terms of our particular space, but we need them to feel comfortable about sharing their personal data, making sure that they want to share their financial information for us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all about, you know, improved customer relationships because ultimately we want to build a stronger brand, which means repeat business, adding to our things. When we start talking about reputation and brand image, right? Man, this day and age, and we've seen it time and time again across all different industries, the negative publicity you can get when you have a breach or you mishandle a breach
Yeah.
can be very severe in terms of the consequences and can ultimately result in the loss of customers. So we have to prioritize, just like everybody else, data privacy to help build that positive reputation and really differentiate us in the hotel as a trusted provider in our industry. Because of that, you know, relationship where we have vacation ownerships, where we have start talking about banks, you know, and timeshares, there are a lot of rules and regulations about how we operate. So just the compliance alone in, you know, in our particular space and the data protection regulations such as GDPR, you know, CCPA for California, and this myriad of other privacy regulations. I think we're at 12 different privacy regulations in the States now. Ensuring compliance with these regulations, right, is crucial because every time a new law comes and opens up for a state, I guarantee you, we've got guest owners reaching out to us, trying to, you know, make sure that they can exercise their privacy rights. And we want to maintain that, you know, competitive advantage. So for me, adopting a robust privacy practice is really the way that we're trying to go about doing that. The last thing I'll say is we collect a lot of information, far more than people realize in the hospitality. And the reason why is because what makes a really great vacation, right? There's resorts all over the place. What makes a great vacation is that personalized guest experience, right? So in order to do that, I do have to know, and it sounds silly, do you like a fluffy pillow? Where do you like the location of your room? Do you like to be on the ground floor where you can get to the pool quickly? Do you like to be near the beach side?
Yeah.
Right? All those little things to be able to, you know, help tailor our guest experience, you know, whether it's our service, anticipate those needs. That's what helps to build a memorable stay and wants people to come back. If you have to worry about all these little things on your vacation, not really a vacation.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a
I
good
need
point.
the data. So.
Wow. Yeah. I've just gone through a cruise vacation 2 weeks ago, and I had some of that experience. I was surprised by two different things: by the large scale of personal information that the cruise company collected, but also the experience that I had. They knew so much about me that I was on vacation. So it's pretty much what you were saying. And how does the company manage data privacy? Is it through a data privacy compliance program? If so, how is the program structured?
Yep. So it's a privacy program for you, right? So I've broken it up into 3 pillars. So I've got a privacy compliance and risk management function. I've got a privacy operations function, and I've got a privacy center of excellence. And one of the things I've noted is it is fairly hard to find structures. Like coming from the security side, security organizations are fairly well structured overall. There's a general feel of how it is. It's not so much yet in the privacy space. So there is a little bit of trial and error. Like, full transparency. I'm a privacy person, so I like to be transparent for it. Compliance and risk management, right? You can manage, we've got our privacy due diligence, our training and awareness program falls underneath that particular area. Contracts review, the whole 9, anything you would expect from that risk management side.
Yeah.
Under privacy operations, think of this more as customer facing, right? So one of the big key differences, at least in my opinion, between privacy and security, privacy is actually a customer facing organization, right? With data subject access rights, the fact that every one of my websites has the privacy policy on it, the ability to get to the data subject access, forms for it. That means customers are reaching out, touching us time and time again, and we're having a lot of, coordination. Mm-hmm. That's an important aspect. My center of excellence, we're still growing that out. Right now, that seems to be kind of tailored to more privacy engineering, building out new capabilities, for it. So our cookie compliance program sits underneath there. I suspect after we've got it fully mature, it will probably transition over to privacy operations because, again, right, when we think of cookies on websites, those cookie banners, that's really the first touch point people have in the digital ecosystem with you. So that's your first impression, is really, what does that cookie banner look like? Is it inviting? Does it make me want to do more? And depending on the regulation, you may have a cookie wall. So that may be all that they see for it. And then there's a myriad of other things, consent management, policy and notice management sits under privacy operations. And I try to have an individual running each of those key areas. So we're still growing as an overall, but we've added about nine headcount over the last 2 years. So not too bad in terms of growth.
Yeah, that's impressive. And that's actually makes me feel better about going to Marriott Hotel. And it's interesting you say that. I'm always cruising privacy. I'm such a dork. I cruise privacy policies online. But I was looking at Bank of America's the other day, and they said, we're not doing any more third-party tracking. We're just not. And I thought that was interesting coming from an institution like Bank of America. That's huge. And then I guarantee you there were a lot of people that were unhappy with that statement. Now, knowing how to look at the developer tools and see what trackers are on there, I don't know if, it's third-party tracking, the cookie banners. And I agree with you a great deal, like the brand value, the ROI from that consumer trust. It's something that I know for a fact, myself, my kids, and many of my colleagues, like that's a real thing. And I don't know that companies, I come from a background of intellectual property, trademarks, patents, but that, that brand value associated with the Marriott name, the Marriott icons, the trademarks, like that trust, that consumer trust is going to follow and add value to that brand. So for me, when I'm talking to clients, and it's a hard spin sometimes to spend money on some of these things, but if you're, especially if you're marketing to a very tech savvy, digitally savvy marketing demographic, they're going to want to know some of these things. So, but yeah, I agree. And speaking of, as far as like handling information, you see software coming out all the time that my favorite is it's GDPR compliant software. I'm like, so, I mean, how do you evaluate the software? How do you determine, I'm sure Marriott, I'm sure you guys are probably bombarded with, people or vendors who say we can help with this. How are you managing that?
Yep. And before I answer that, I would be remiss. So I just want to make sure, so you have Marriott International, right, which is a separate company. And then you have Marriott Vacations Worldwide. So we're two separate companies. We spun off of MI about 10 years ago. We were their vacation ownership line of business, but we are two separate companies, albeit we are a licensed Marriott brand. So we usually refer to, like I said, as MVW.
Okay, so, gotcha.
But to answer your question, yes, there is a lot of software going on behind the scenes for it. It's interesting, right? So originally, when I first started, now it's been 2+ years, we used to do data ratings, which would be, depending on the rating of the data, would determine whether or not the privacy team, got involved. That was okay, but as the definition for personal information has changed and expanded, for it, I'll be honest, it's gotten a lot more difficult to just get involved in the process. So we've now taken this stance of, if data is involved, we need to be involved regardless. Even if we don't need to do some type of review, we need to make sure that we've documented that we are aware of it and did not need to do a review. Because inevitably, right, company X, I'll get a question, well, did you guys look at company X? Well, if I don't document that I didn't need to look at it, I won't be able to tell you, and then I assume that we just haven't looked at it, right? Can't prove a negative. So it's just easier to look at everything across the board, but we maintain very, very tight hooks with our legal department as well as our procurement department and security. It is constantly, we've got multiple different brands that sit underneath the NVW portfolio. Right. Interval International is a vacation timeshare like trading, right? So it's an exchange, right? You can exchange your time with one vacation for a different space. Ooh. We have Hyatt Vacation Club sits underneath us as well. So the Hyatt Vacation Ownership brand sits underneath MVW as well as the Marriott Vacation Club. And then we have Aqua Aston over in Hawaii. So all of these different brands have their own unique face. They're all doing their own different things. So trying to make sure that nothing gets between the cracks can be challenging at times. So there is this kind of unwritten rule. So procurement, have you talked to privacy? Security, have you talked to privacy? If they come to privacy, we'll say, have you talked to, procurement or legal for it? But we have a very, very specific process where they go through a questionnaire, they align with what data they're doing, how it's being processed, the information that we're going to be used, what business or brand is it going to support, and it goes through each and every time. And the interesting thing is that it makes it where the business starts to recognize and realize that no matter where they go, it's going to eventually have to come through us so that they can sign the contract. And as you can imagine, we have to have DPAs, depending if it's the EU, it might have to have SCCs, it might have to have the International Data Transfer Addendum for the UK. All of these things come and play a part. California, we have an addendum for California now in terms of specific wording for contracts. So this is where those partnerships come into play. So it doesn't matter if it's a big company, little company, what the engagement is, we're going to find out about it and we're going to insist that it goes through. And we never take anybody's words. You mentioned about being GDPR compliant. Yeah, the old thing, trust but verify. Yeah. I have learned the hard way in the history of my career, the one time you don't verify, that will be the one time where you're like, I knew I should have gone back and double checked on this one. So everybody gets the same thing in terms of a review from us. And I will tell you, we've got a pretty solid, privacy risk program. I mean, the lady that runs it, she is phenomenal. I won't say her name because I don't want anyone's, headhunting for her, but she does an amazing job in the risk space. I mean, she truly has. I mean, and she's now, branching it out and tying those risks to try to quantify those in a monetary way so that the business better understands.
Yeah, that's I just had a client ask me about, because I am advising on the California, what is, because those clauses are showing up in contracts all over the place now, especially from bigger companies like large insurers. Those clauses are in there as of yet, like several weeks ago. But yeah, that the client was like, well, do we have to put specific language to this effect in there? Can't we just generalize it and shove it in some other section? I'm like, yeah, you can, of course, but would I advise it? No, absolutely not. So, yeah.
What I found at least for us, and I'm assuming most of my peers probably have the same thing, it's the renewals that are really the ones that people get a lot more. And, in the space of hospitality, we have, contracts that are fairly long-term and a lot of different things. Well, we've been working with them for 5 years. It might be an excursion service, right? You come to our resort and we have a partnership with somebody that provides an excursion. We've been working with them for 5 years or 10 years. I don't know why we have to make changes.
Yeah.
Laws have changed. The requirements have changed. We've got to go through this, and we need to make sure we cross our T's and dot our I's each and every time. I tell folks that in privacy, we straddle the fence. There are some things that are compliance where we have to do it. And then there are some things that are best practice.
Yes.
Right. And it does throw them off. When I say them, I mean the business. It does throw them off sometimes because they have a hard time. Like, well, how come this is a choice and this one isn't?
Yeah.
Depends on the regulation, country we're in.
Yep. Yeah. You mentioned something very important. Verified, right? Gartner released last year a survey on the buyer's behavior, and on the top of the list is data privacy for the features the software should have, so they would consider if they would buy the software. How do you guys verify if a software is data privacy compliant? How do you guys do that?
Yep. So believe it or not, it's all through the same risk process. So everything starts with an intake form. So, and we have what we call our GRUIT as internally, both privacy, security, legal, and procurement for it. And then we work together in a partnership. So we identify what controls that it says it has. We may go out and verify it. We may have them do a demo. It really just depends on what the software is doing and what it says it has in terms of control. Now it starts to get a little complex in terms of sometimes, right? There's only so much you can verify. And I'll give you an example. Company X says that you're going to submit your data. We're going to put it into a pseudonymized fashion. You're going to be able to run your analytics against it, but you can't reverse that pseudonymized. And then two lists will come together. We'll give you a target list. When it comes back to your environment, you're going to have a target list. It is hard because their secret sauce is their secret sauce to verify that in that whole analytics process that's going on behind the scenes, is it truly, doing what it's supposed to and saying? In some cases, you can only verify the output and the inputs you receive for it. And then you have to look at, kind of their technical schematics and trust that those are correct. I mean, there is some elements depending on what it's doing. There's nothing that's ironclad, I would ever say.
That's interesting. The new Texas privacy law. There's some really interesting language in that law. I went through it because I'm in Texas now, having moved from Colorado. Now I'm in Texas, but the law that there is a provision within that law that does not, unlike GDPR, where you're joint and several, basically. In Texas, you are not held accountable for non-disclosures from the processor and vice versa in that relationship under the Texas law. So that's interesting because, you're right. And having done that process, that auditing of vendors, they can tell you, they can check the box, and until you send somebody who knows what questions to ask and how to find out if they're telling the truth into that company to audit or do a review or run the demo, you don't really have anything other than their word in that contract to hold them accountable. So
it comes back to that, to the brand concept, though. You may not be liable, right? And I'll pick one, right? Everyone's aware of what happened with Target back in, 2013, 2014?
Yeah.
Right. Everybody's also aware that it was the HVAC company.
Yeah.
Nobody can name the HVAC company that did it, because at the end of the day, the HVAC company may be liable and have to pay the bill behind. Who knows?
Right.
That's not what's going to be remembered. What people remember is that Target had an issue, had to pull back from pushing into Canada, and nobody wanted to shop there during Christmas time. Right? That's a big impact to a brand. So when we think about it from, hospitality, it's the same thing. We don't want that type of, impact on our brand. So that's what we do, as much due diligence as we possibly can, at the end of the day, to feel comfortable. And you have to. I mean, everything is quantified by risk, right? So as long as it aligns to your risk appetite, and if the output of what the business is trying to do, because, look, I don't want to kid us. Hospitality, we're as much a marketing company as, we are a hospitality company, right?
Yeah.
It has to be worth it in the long run for what we're doing. And that's that trade-off between, I'll say the privacy office and the business, of trying to figure out where that comfort zone is, or what other mitigations we can put into place if we truly are concerned. And it may be, for example, you can use that software, but initially, maybe it's only US data. Maybe we're not going to push European data until we get a little more comfortable with it. So some of that may be a trial and error. We may take a phased approach just so that we get comfortable with what's going on from our own side.
Gotcha. Yeah. Your data maps just must be a work of art.
Sure, let's call it that.
I can't. You were talking about the, Hyatt properties and the Hawaii properties, and my mind is just like a flashback to a couple of whiteboards along a wall. There's that movie, The Accountant, where Ben Affleck writes on the windows of the building.
I'm familiar with it.
That's what I'm seeing. I'm like, wow.
So I will tell you that we operate our different lines of business. So the Hyatt Vacation Club versus the Marriott Vacation Club, right? They're two separate licensed brands for it. The data between those two never touches. So, because, Marriott International and Hyatt are two separate companies,
right?
I'll call it the real world, right? For lack of a better terminology. And they're competing for market share, right? It just happens that, MVW owns both of those in the vacation space, but we still have to adhere to. So when we start talking about privacy and data usage and the controls, for it, we are very much in that space in terms of making sure and ensuring that we don't cross streams ever. So they are crazy when they're data mapping, but I can tell you there is a giant wall that stands between any of our different brands to make sure that we never mix the data from one to the other. Oh. So the way we've structured the overall program, we use technology just like anybody else. We have separate tenants as we're running it. We really run
separate
6 different privacy programs, separate program.
Wow, that's impressive. Wow.
Yeah. Do you guys think that certification would help the companies in identifying what would be the right software when it comes to being data privacy compliance? Because we know that the European Data Privacy Board has just come up with this official certification called Euro Privacy. Do you guys think that that would help somehow?
I do think it will help to a certain extent for it. And, I haven't really dug into the Euro privacy for it. Japan has a similar one for their privacy. It depends if it's a third party, right, that's going to go through, if it's going to be self-attestation. There are a number of factors that come into play in terms of whether or not something like that is or is not, useful. Yeah. I mean, it's no different really than saying you're ISO 27701 certified, right, in privacy, right? Except you'll have a third party that will come out and actually do that. It depends on what the scope of it was, right? So if you take our company, we have multiple lines of business. One line of business maybe, but the other one isn't. So you can never take things at face value for what folks say. you gotta, the devil is truly in the details. You gotta dig in. Is the scope covering this particular product, for it? Even for BCRs, right? Binding corporate rules, right? You'll see it and you'll be like, oh yeah. And then you look and you dig into their BCRs and, oh wait, it doesn't include this particular line of business. It's trying to contract with me, just the mothership and maybe a couple other lines of business.
Yeah.
So yes, it may help, but you're still going to have to do some level of due diligence to make sure that, ultimately you're covering it. Because at the end of the day, right, we want our rooms filled. We want folks enjoying the beaches at our resorts, and any misstep could impact that.
Just as a quick, sorry, I know we might be going a little long, but this is just Candyland for me. When the company considers, you said due diligence, when the company considers buying a property or buying like a boutique line of hotels or resorts, I would imagine you probably directly get involved with that due diligence, because you would be the perfect expert to step in and understand where the bodies are buried, where the rabbit holes are, where, the potholes are and things like that. That amount of due diligence, especially in a service industry like this, that is heavy on marketing. That, if you're trying to determine the value of a company, but let's say it's a great boutique line, but they have like the worst cybersecurity posture, it's just like, so, do you guys get involved with that? If any sort of due diligence there?
This is all public knowledge. I think 12, 18 months ago, we did buy a boutique line. It was called Welk Resorts over in California and Mexico. For it, they're now going to be part of our Hyatt Vacation Club, banner for it. But in that process, it did undergo both a privacy assessment as well as a cybersecurity assessment. They're separate, for it. While the CISO and I partner, and of course our teams partner.
Sure.
We are looking at two individual things, but it is all part of that whole process for any type of merger, acquisition, also divestitures.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we divested, a different line of business located over in Hawaii last year for it. And it's not as simple as people think, right? We've got privacy controls across all different websites. When they take over those websites, are they going to take over those controls? We have privacy policies that are posted out, tied to it, that are saying that it's our name, our brand. How do we pull back from all of those things and make sure that, we really are ceasing to share data when we say we are, because it's no longer part of us. So we get involved in both sides.
That's awesome.
Interesting. Very interesting. Just one last question. Most software, they say that they can help you with data discovery. For me, that's I usually see that as something that it can't be true. It can't be true, just because of personal information definition has two different ways of seeing it. Any information related with the person identified, that's fine, but identifiable, that changes a little bit the whole context, because the software would have to be able to identify different contexts, artificial intelligence, and then come up with the conclusion, that person might be identifiable. But I want to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, it's I guess I laugh because I actually
good answer. I like it.
I know it wasn't very smooth, but I just got a call literally this morning with one of the software providers saying, data discovery, and it's a struggle. To your point, there are different definitions, different types, and everybody seems to want to. Maybe it's my jaded security background. I just don't believe there's a silver bullet that's going to be able to go out there and tell me where all of my, personal data is, and it's just going to put it in a nice format and there it is, ready to go. Because, not trying to be funny, doing this is nothing new. Security needs to know where the keys to the kingdoms are and where is our sensitive data, which means these are our critical assets that I know which ones to protect. IT has been, doing this, right? for it. So I think there's usefulness for it. I think that they can get to a certain level of accuracy. The question I always have with the vendors is, at what cost?
Yeah.
What is the lift? What I've heard from my peers and what I've seen, previously is, wow, it takes a long time to teach those systems and to train them on what is considered personal data or personal information. And at the rate in which the landscape is moving, man, by the time you train it, that definition, there's a good chance that it may have already changed, to something else where you're having to do that. And then you have to expand it across all the systems, right? And there's so many. We are no different than any other organization. We've got new systems. We've got a lot of legacy systems. Trying to get that integration where it can go out and find that. It's a tough nut to crack, right? Yeah. I mean, I applaud them for trying it. What I think is going to be interesting in this space for privacy is we are going to see a shift out of what I would call traditional compliance policy, doing risk assessments. And I do think privacy engineering, privacy engineers, privacy tech, I do think that is going to be an expanding space that's going to require a shift in mindset for privacy programs as a whole. They're going to need to be able to build a privacy technology stack. Right?
Yeah, for sure. That is the future. Privacy enhancement technology is the future, right? We had a very interesting episode with Aaron Weller. He's the privacy engineer for HP, and we spoke a lot about PATS, about privacy enhancement technology. And I do know that both of you, were together at an event in New York. Is that right?
It's correct. We spoke on the same panel, yes.
Okay. Well, guys, that's it for today. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Andrew, thank you so much. This is a lot of fun.
Andrew, nice. You are a very nice guy, very, well prepared, so it was really nice talking with you. I wouldn't expect anything besides that, just by the position you have, but I was surprised how this whole conversation just came in an easy way. And I think that we were able to at least explain a couple of things that some people struggle in understanding and some other just don't want to understand, right?
They don't want educating the organization. If you've been able to do that, Drew, that's half the battle, in my opinion. Is just, everybody at that point in the chain. I advocated very much for one of my companies to train from the collection point personnel all the way up and down, leadership or whatever, and it made a huge difference in spotting, gaps and risks and things when the person collecting the initial information or even configuring the software to collect that information knew about privacy. Those things were like just immediately flagged for the whole org, and it saved or took us a few times because it was I think education and educating people. Plus, it can become personal, and they take it home, and it becomes part of how they live a little bit more than it was before once they're educated.
We always try to do, obviously, 90% of what's important for the business for our privacy training and awareness, but we always try to give them at least 10% of their training in terms of how's this going to impact you personally for your own daily life, for why this stuff is important, so that way they get the holistic, aspect.
And it sticks.
Yeah. Data privacy professionals are shaping the future when it comes to the way people deal with their personal information, right? So thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure. See you next time. And for those who are listening, we are going to upload the content on Spotify. And I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew.
Thank you.